So this January just seems to be full of surprises, so let's talk about another one. Plane. So Plane is a 2022 action movie, just came out, but it feels like the script was written somewhere around 1992. And yeah, it's definitely a throwback to that kind of movie, but it just came out. And this follows the story of Captain Torrance, played by Gerard Butler. And Captain Torrance is an airline pilot. He used to serve in the RAF, for the Scottish division. He ran kind of bootleg jobs there, and he's still running like the lower jobs here because he's got a violent history. And he's got to transport a bunch of people across the South China Sea while this big storm is happening. And airline stipulations say if you can fly over the clouds, you're going to be safe. But as we'll see, that doesn't exactly happen. But to make matters more complicated, you also have a prisoner transport on board. You have Mike Colter, who's this convict, and he's being extradited to America, so he's got a guard keeping a close eye on him, making sure he doesn't interact with any of the other passengers, so that also adds more tension on the captain's shoulders. And as the trailer showed, once they hit that turbulence, they hit that storm, the plane gets struck by lightning and it goes down somewhere in the Philippines, I believe, either the Philippines or Indochina, somewhere around there. It's this island nobody really cares about. It's war-torn. There's all these different factions. Even the government doesn't want to get involved in there. So it's basically every man for himself. So now Gerard Butler has to team up with Mike Colter because they're the best case scenario for survival of everybody, and they have to figure out a plan to get everybody off the island as fast as possible before all the warlords and militia find out that they're even here. And yeah, that's pretty much the movie. It's very straightforward, and you could see this being made or at least written in the early 90s, at least I do, and I could envision someone like Bruce Willis and Wesley Snipes playing these lead roles. But even with the actors that we have, it's still a really entertaining movie, and I'm going to get my nitpicks out of the way first because it's not a perfect movie. There are some flaws. There are some things that don't work as well as they could have. The first of which is the directing in general. There's really nothing all that special about how the movie was directed, and the movie uses a lot of shaky cam. Almost exclusively the movie's handheld and kind of shaking around. And I'll get to in a little bit why that doesn't bother me as much as I think it could have, but it's not impossible to follow the action. It's not like Liam Neeson shaky cam when it's just all over the place and you can't even see what's happening on the screen. No, you're able to follow the action pretty well, and it's edited pretty nice, so it's not super distracting, but it is something where I'm like, if they'd locked down the camera a little bit more, we would have gotten a lot better cinematography. And there actually is one shot at the very end. You see a character and it's a close-up on their face and it kind of zooms out. It dollies out and you see more of the environment around them. And it's this kind of breath of fresh air. And it is locked down. I think it's the only shot in the whole movie that I can remember where the camera's actually locked on something. It's not handheld and kind of moving around. So maybe that was a direction choice. And I will say, when that shot happens, you do feel the relief that, oh, this is over, we can relax, we can breathe now. But I still would have liked to see a little more variation or intentionality with how the rest of the movie was shot to get to that point. And the other flaw, I guess you could say, with this movie is that the chemistry between Gerard Butler and Mike Colter is not as good as you'd kind of want it to be in a movie like this. The two of them do spend a lot of time together in this movie, and they do have some bantering back and forth and some conversations, and they do have a relationship by the end of the movie, but you don't really feel it. And I think a big part of that is Mike Colter as the convict, and usually I give the fault 50-50 between chemistry that it just didn't work. But Gerard Butler in this movie has surprisingly good chemistry with pretty much everybody in this movie, with the flight attendants, with the passengers. Whenever he has to confront or talk to somebody, he's got that Gerard Butler attitude that I'm like, oh yeah, that's why you were Leonidas in 300. You just don't take any crap from anybody. But Mike Colter plays his character very subdued and reserved, which I guess in a situation like this, if you're a convict, you would be more subdued and reserved. But I imagine someone like Wesley Snipes, or I guess keeping with the Blade casting, Mahershala Ali. When I picture someone like that in the role, they bring a little bit more edge to the performance. There's a little bit more of a quick-witted response that can go back and forth with Gerard Butler more combatively. And with Mike Coulter, I mean, he's a great actor. No shade thrown to him. I loved him in Luke Cage. I thought he was phenomenal. But in this role, I just wish I would have seen a bit more of his personality brought to the forefront, because he does play it very close to the chest. And while he isn't terrible, he serves the movie fine. It's just one of those nitpicks that I thought about, a couple days after I saw the movie, and now I'm giving it to you. But at the end of the day, these nitpicks don't bother me at all, or even as much as they probably should, because when I saw this movie, I was under the influence. I had a drink. The Regal I went to had a bar. I was like, okay, I'm going to see Plane. It's probably not going to be very good. I could probably use a drink. I just got off of work. So let's have a good time. I got a tall glass of beer. I got some popcorn, and I just sat down, ready to have a good time. And while as someone who reviews movies and takes movies pretty seriously, it probably isn't the best way to go into a movie to objectively see it, the alcohol did help. I didn't care so much about the little things. I just cared about, did the movie entertain me? Did the story keep going? Was it realistic enough? Was it plausible? And I wouldn't be surprised if the alcohol even made the shaky cam seem a little bit more reasonable. And I really have to stress just how much fun this movie is. It's escapist entertainment. It's not trying to say something super deep about people or society or the world or war or politics. It's just a situation where a bunch of people get stranded on this island and they have to figure out how to get off. It's incredibly simple, straightforward, and the action, when it does happen, it is really effective. There's some really good R-rated fighting and violence and combat, but it doesn't feel exploitive. It feels very much in that vein of late 80s, early 90s action movies where, yeah, they were R-rated and they were violent and things blew up and people got killed and there's blood, but it didn't go overboard. It wasn't just gore for the sake of gore. It was all in service to the story to make it realistic. And speaking of realistic, this movie, despite its flaws, has probably the most realistic version of people using cars as cover in a gunfight that I've ever seen. Because as someone who's no stranger to guns, I've handled various different types of guns and weapons throughout my life, and I've actually had a pretty decent education as for what gun safety and gun handling and gun defense and different scenarios are preferable if you're ever in that situation. And something that I learned early on is that if you're hiding behind a car for cover and people are shooting at you, your level of safety depends greatly on what part of the car you are hiding behind. Because here's the truth, if you're hiding behind any of the doors, like the middle section of the car, you're gonna get shot. Not just because you can get shot through the window, but if you're ducked and covered behind the door, behind the metal, that metal is so thin on either door that any gun on the other side that has a decent at all caliber will be able to fire through both sheets of metal and hit you, and you'll probably die. So not the best tactic. And the same thing's true with hiding behind the trunk. If the trunk is empty and it's just the metal of the trunk, that's not going to stop a bullet. You're still in danger. But the number one safest place to hide behind a car is behind the hood, the front of the car, behind the engine. Because there's all this metal in the hood of the car. You know, the engine, the batteries, everything is in the hood, so that will stop the bullet. And I was so happy that this movie actually addresses that in a visually interesting way. There's a gunfight that happens and people are hiding behind cars, and you see people hiding behind all different parts of the car, and the movie makes a point to show you that if you're hiding behind the door, boom, you're getting shot. I think it was like a 50 caliber bullet, goes right through both doors and just blows a dude away on the other side. But then you have the leader of the bad guys, and you know he's not going to die right away, and they have him positioned behind the hood of the car. Arguably the safest place you could hide behind in the car. And at first I was saying, oh, he's got plot armor, he's not getting shot because the story demands it, when really he would be shot. But then I thought about it and I looked at where he was, and he's behind the hood, so yeah, that is the safest place, and as the leader, he should know that, so that's why he took that position, and then his lackeys were in the more dangerous positions, and they're just getting blown away like crazy. So I really appreciate that this movie actually understood how guns work in relationship to cars and what's the best cover to take, and showed that on screen. I've never really seen that shown before, so I thought that was really cool, and that alone is worth the price of admission, I think. But that's not to downplay the rest of the movie. Earlier on in the movie, Gerard Butler gets in his first big scrap with a bad guy, and it's all shot like one long take. I think there are a couple hidden edits in the fighting that they kind of hid behind people's clothes or something moving in front of the frame. But for the most part, it looks like this is one long continuous take, and it's realistic. You see Gerard Butler really get down and dirty with this bad guy, wrestling around, choking each other out. It's intense, and you are white knuckling it when you see them fighting, because you don't know who's going to win. I mean, you kind of know who's going to win because Gerard Butler's the hero of the movie, but you also know that Mike Colter is somewhere out there and you're waiting for him to just come in and save the day. And the movie doesn't give you that right away. In fact, the movie as a whole is really good at delaying gratification, because this whole movie is about them getting off the island. You know, they've got to get off the island somehow, some way, eventually, and the movie just keeps delaying that inevitability. Things keep popping up that make it more complicated for them all to just leave. So the movie itself is a lot like that one fight, where it just stretches it out, it delays it, it ups the stakes. And that's all good storytelling. And that's exactly what I went into this movie hoping it would be. It's a fun action movie, throwback to 90s situational action movies where you have a good guy and a convict that have to work together for the greater good. And it's just a blast. I hope you guys go out and see it. Theaters are really hurting. And this January, I've been so impressed with what we've gotten so far. We've got a really good horror movie in Megan, and now we have a really good throwback action movie in Plane. This may be one of the best Januaries I've ever experienced, because if they keep this up, the reputation of January as being just the garbage bin of movies that studios have absolutely no faith in, that stigma might be gone, because so far I'm having a lot of fun. But now I turn it over to you guys. What do you think about Plane? Whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content, and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my nerdy talk, and I'll see you in the next video.